This is Meet Sean, where we break down real life topics insurance, annuities, real estate, travel planning, and home ownership so you can make smarter moves. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
You watch a house flipping show and there's this really comforting, almost magical formula to it all.
Oh, absolutely. The classic 30-minute montage.
Right. Someone buys a completely dilapidated property, they swing a sledgehammer into a wall while some upbeat rock music plays. Then there's maybe a tiny dramatic 5-minute hiccup about like a water pipe.
It's just enough drama for the commercial break.
Exactly. And then boom, 30 minutes later, the house is pristine. They're all high-fiving and cashing this massive check. But what that montage completely skips is that true real estate wealth isn't just some aesthetic exercise, It is a brutal financial and operational gauntlet.
It completely ignores the grueling, granular reality of how investment capital actually moves and grows in the real world. I mean, the skills you need to acquire a distressed property are entirely different from the skills you need to manage dynamic rental.
And neither of those really prepares you for the deep psychological warfare required to price and sell a home for maximum profit.
No, not at all. It's a completely different ballgame.
That is exactly why today's deep dive is designed specifically for you. Because whether you are a weekend DIY warrior, a prospective landlord trying to build some passive income, or just someone prepping to sell your own home, we are going to replace those reality TV myths with actual profit maximizing strategies.
It's about getting back to reality.
Right. Our mission today is to map out the complete profitable life cycle of a real estate investment. We're pulling from 3 incredibly comprehensive guides written by real estate expert Sean Carter. We're taking you from buying that foreclosed fixer-upper to transforming it into a highly optimized, cash-flowing rental to finally executing the perfect exit strategy.
It is a fascinating trajectory to look at. And, to understand the entire life cycle, we really have to start at the absolute bottom of the market, which is the foreclosure.
The dreaded foreclosure.
Right. Buying a foreclosure means the bank has reclaimed the property because the previous owner defaulted.
Yeah.
But a bank is a financial institution, right? It's not a property management company.
They aren't going over that to mow the lawn.
Exactly. When they take possession, all maintenance halts immediately. I mean, the heat might be turned off in the middle of winter, leading to burst pipes. The roof might leak for 6 months with literally no one noticing.
It's like buying a mystery box at an auction. You might get treasure, or you might get a catastrophic plumbing nightmare. You simply do not know until you open up the walls.
You really don't.
And because it's a mystery box, your financing strategy has to reflect that inherent risk, right? Like, you can't just walk into a bank and ask for a standard 30-year mortgage on a house that's missing all its copper wiring.
No. Conventional lenders will just walk away immediately. They require a home to actually be habitable because the house itself is the collateral for the loan.
Makes sense.
If you default, they need to know they can sell it. So if the kitchen has been ripped out to the studs, the collateral is worthless to them. This is where specialized financial instruments come into play. Specifically, you're looking at renovation mortgages like the home-style loan or the FHA 203K loan.
Let's break down the mechanics of those, because I know it's not just the bank handing you a duffel bag of cash for renovations.
Not at all. It's highly regulated. These loans are brilliant because they combine the purchase price of the home and the estimated renovation costs into one single mortgage. But the lender tightly controls that capital to protect their investment.
So how do you actually get the money to buy the lumber and drywall?
Well, the renovation funds are placed into an escrow account. You don't just get the money up front. You have to hire a licensed contractor to do the work, and then an independent inspector comes out to verify the progress.
Wow, so they're checking your homework.
Basically, yeah. Only after the inspector signs off does the bank release a draw, which is a portion of the funds to pay the contractor. It really forces a rigid professional timeline on the entire project.
Carter's guides are incredibly strict about the budgeting phase of this process, too. He points out you have to build in a 10 to 20% contingency fund specifically for those mystery box surprises we talked about.
Oh, the surprises are guaranteed.
Yeah. But there is a hidden trap in the budgeting section that catches so many first-time investors. And it isn't the cost of the drywall or the lumber, it's the long-term carrying costs.
Yes. This is a huge one. When you take a dilapidated foreclosure and turn it into a beautiful, structurally sound home, you fundamentally change its assessed value.
The county tax assessor is going to notice.
They absolutely will notice those permitted upgrades, and your property taxes are going to spike. Furthermore, your homeowner's insurance premiums will rise dramatically because, insurance is based on replacement cost, not what you actually paid for the house.
Right, if you bought the shell for $100,000, but it would now cost $300,000 to rebuild it after a fire.
Then your premiums are calculated on that higher number. Exactly. If you haven't factored those increased holding costs into your monthly operating budget, your profit margins will just vanish before the paint is even dry.
Wait, hold on. Everything I've ever read about flipping says sweat equity is where your profit margin lives. Putting in your own labor to save money is like the whole point of the weekend warrior dream.
It's definitely the popular narrative.
Right. So if I'm hiring licensed professionals at $150 an hour, aren't I just bleeding out my potential profit? Are we just ruining the house's profit margin to save ourselves some elbow grease?
What's fascinating here is how the data delineates exactly where sweat equity is valuable and where it becomes a massive crippling liability.
Okay, so where does it actually work?
Well, the DIY route is fantastic for high visual impact, low-risk tasks, painting walls, ripping up old carpet, basic landscaping. You can really maximize your savings there because those tasks require time rather than specialized, highly regulated expertise.
But I'm guessing I shouldn't be rewiring the breaker box.
No, definitely not. Professionals are absolutely non-negotiable for electrical work, plumbing, moving load-bearing walls, or anything requiring a municipal permit.
And we are not just talking about the physical danger of electrocuting yourself, right? This is really about the financial liability.
Precisely. It is purely about long-term asset valuation and legal compliance. Imagine you save $3,000 by wiring the new kitchen yourself. 2 years later, you go to sell the house.
And the inspector shows up.
Right. The buyer's home inspector discovers unpermitted, non-code compliant wiring. The buyer's lender will instantly refuse to underwrite the mortgage until it is fixed by a licensed professional.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you might lose a $400,000 sale or even face a massive lawsuit if a fire breaks out. All because you wanted to save a fraction of a percent on the initial renovation. DIY the cosmetic stuff, but you had to outsource the structural.
Makes total sense. So let's say the drywall is up, the wiring is completely to code, the landscaping looks great, and the house is pristine. We survived the mystery box.
Congratulations.
Thanks. But right now, it's just a very expensive, empty box. It's time to turn that static asset into a cash-flowing engine, which brings us to the shifting landscape of the rental market.
And this landscape has evolved far beyond traditional year-long leases. We are seeing a massive structural shift toward midterm rentals.
Midterm rentals. These are stays lasting anywhere from 30 days to 6 months, right? It's this incredibly lucrative hybrid model.
Yeah, the midterm rental bridges a critical gap in the market by addressing the really glaring flaws of the two extremes.
Because short-term is exhausting.
Exactly. Short-term rentals, like weekend Airbnb stays, offer high nightly rates, but they come with constant turnover, cleaning exhaustion, and extreme seasonal volatility.
And then traditional long-term leases offer incredible stability, but your revenue is totally locked in. You cannot adjust for inflation or sudden market spikes for 12 whole months.
Right. The midterm rental captures a completely different demographic. You're looking at traveling nurses with housing stipends, corporate executives on relocation assignments, or even families displaced by home insurance claims.
People who need a real home, but not permanently.
Exactly. You secure significantly higher revenue than a traditional lease, but with only a fraction of the operational nightmare of a short-term vacation rental.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because whether you are doing short or midterm rentals, the operational side basically lives or dies by the technology stack you deploy.
Oh, technology is everything now.
Carter lists an entire ecosystem of software just to keep the property running. You have property management systems, automated messaging protocols, smart locks that generate unique codes for every single guest. But the linchpin of the whole operation seems to be the channel manager.
Yes. If you are listing your property on multiple platforms simultaneously, like Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, Furnished Finder, a channel manager is literally the only thing standing between you and operational collapse.
Because of double bookings.
Exactly. Without it, a guest could book your house on Platform A for the month of October, and a few hours later, someone else books it on Platform B for the exact same month.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is. You are immediately forced to cancel on one of them, which triggers severe algorithmic penalties that will just bury your listing on those search platforms.
So how does the channel manager stop that?
It uses an API to instantly ping all your connected accounts. The millisecond a reservation goes through on VRBO, It drops an invisible curtain over those exact dates everywhere else.
That is so smart. But the tech isn't just for preventing double booking disasters. It's actively deployed to drive revenue through dynamic pricing algorithms.
Which is incredibly powerful.
It operates exactly like buying airline tickets. You look at a flight to Chicago on a Tuesday, and it's one price. You check again on Friday, and it has spiked by $200 because the algorithm noticed the plane filling up.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, dynamic pricing removes the flawed human element of guesswork. I mean, a human property owner might not realize that a major tech conference just announced dates in their city 8 months from now.
Right, I'm not checking convention schedules every day.
Oh, exactly. But the pricing algorithm is constantly scraping data. It looks at historical booking curves, competitor occupancy rates, and real-time surges in local hotel searches.
So it sees the demand before you do.
Yes. It sees that sudden spike in web traffic and instantly raises your property's nightly rate for that specific week, well before you even know the conference exists.
And I assume it works in reverse, too.
It does. Conversely, during a dead week in the off-season, it automatically lowers the price just enough to undercut the competition and ensure the property doesn't sit completely empty. You are capturing absolute maximum revenue during demand peaks and maintaining baseline occupancy during the valleys.
But driving revenue isn't just about the nightly rate. Carter gets very specific about the psychology of fees and the value of upselling. Because setting the cleaning fee is a really delicate balancing act, isn't it?
It's a huge point of friction for guests.
Right. If you set it too high to cover your own costs, potential guests feel nickel and dimed and they just abandon the checkout page.
Well, you have to remember, you're running a hospitality business, and guest psychology dictates your algorithm ranking. If they feel exploited by hidden fees, they leave a 3-star review.
Which is basically a death sentence.
It essentially renders your property invisible on search platforms. But you can increase revenue by providing genuine value instead.
Like what kind of value?
Offering mid-stay professional cleanings for an extra fee, or partnering with local businesses to offer curated city tours, or grocery stocking services before they arrive. They feel taken care of, and you build ancillary revenue streams without feeling cheap.
Speaking of taking care of the property, how do you handle security without violating privacy? Carter points to devices like NoiseAware. How does that monitor a property without making the guest feel like they are being spied on?
This is a perfect example of smart compliance. Look, many municipalities and HOAs have instituted draconian noise ordinances. If your guests throw a massive party, you could face thousands of dollars in fines or lose your rental permit entirely.
But you obviously cannot put recording devices in a home. That is a massive illegal privacy violation.
Exactly, and you shouldn't. NoiseAware devices do not record audio or speech at all. They strictly monitor ambient decibel levels.
Oh, so it just measures how loud it is.
Right. If the volume in the living room stays above a specific threshold for an extended period, say 80 decibels for 15 minutes at midnight, the system triggers an alert.
And then what happens?
It integrates with your property management software to automatically send a polite pre-written text message to the guest, just reminding them of the neighborhood quiet hours. It de-escalates a potential party before the neighbors ever have to call the police.
That is amazing. And as we look at the future of this revenue model, the guides make it clear that catering to remote work is really no longer optional. Fast, enterprise-grade internet and a dedicated ergonomic workspace aren't perks anymore, are they?
No, they are absolute baseline requirements. The modern traveler expects the rental to function as an office just as flawlessly as it functions as a home.
Which makes sense if they're staying for 3 months.
It's a non-negotiable asset.
Yeah.
If your Wi-Fi drops during a guest's Zoom presentation, your reviews will tank, regardless of how nice your kitchen countertops are.
Yeah, nobody cares about granite if they can't log into their meeting. So let's fast forward. We've collected steady rental income for a few years. The mortgage has been paid down. The equity has built up. And market data shows inventory is low. It is officially a seller's market.
The best time to sell.
We are ready to execute phase 3, the art of the exit. How do we cash out and guarantee we extract top dollar for all the physical and operational work we've poured into this asset?
Well, this final phase shifts heavily away from operational tech and entirely into the psychology of pricing. And the most fatal error a seller can make here is overpricing the home.
Oh, the classic, let's just list it high and see if we get a bite strategy. I know people who do this.
It's a very common, deeply emotional response. You know, the seller loves the house, they remember all the sweat equity they put into it, so they insist on listing it 15% above the neighborhood average.
But buyers aren't stupid.
Exactly. Modern buyers are incredibly educated. They have access to the exact same market data on their smartphones that real estate agents do. If a house is blatantly overpriced, they simply ignore it. They won't even bother touring it.
And then the house just sits there.
It stagnates.
Yeah.
And in real estate, time on the market is an absolute disease. If a house sits active for 45 days in a hot market, buyers scrolling through the app instantly assume something is structurally wrong with it.
Like it has mold or foundation issues?
Right. The seller panics and is forced to execute a series of price drops. Those price drops signal desperation to the market, and buyers will come in with really aggressive lowball offers.
Ouch.
Yeah, the seller almost always ends up closing for less money than if they had just priced it accurately on day one.
Which is why relying on comparable properties is really the only way to establish a baseline. But Carter says you can't just compare your house to any random house that sold in your zip code.
No, appraisers treat comps as an exact science. A true comparable property has highly similar square footage, the exact same number of bedrooms and bathrooms, a similar lot size, and is in a similar state of renovation.
So you really have to compare apples to apples.
Exactly. If your house has a brand new roof and a gourmet kitchen, and the comp down the street has an original 1990s kitchen and a failing HVAC system, the appraiser physically adjusts the valuation. They will add specific dollar amounts to the comp's sold price to equalize it with your home's upgraded condition.
Okay, let's unpack this next part because this is where I really need to push back. Once you have that perfectly adjusted baseline comp value, Carter outlines 3 pricing strategies: market value pricing, strategic pricing, and competitive pricing.
Yes, the 3 main approaches.
Right. So market value is listing right at that comp average. Strategic is listing slightly higher, knowing the buyer will negotiate down so they feel like they won.
Yep.
But competitive pricing is defined as intentionally listing your house slightly below the comparable properties. Isn't intentionally pricing your house below market value completely terrifying? You are voluntarily asking the public for less money.
This raises an important question about market psychology versus market mechanics. Yes, it feels entirely counterintuitive to ask for less, but you aren't actually intending to sell it for that lower price.
You aren't?
No, you are engineering a situation to trigger a massive buying frenzy.
Walk me through the mechanics of how asking for less actually gets you more money.
It all comes down to search filters. Let's say your home's true market value is $415,000. If you price it at $415,000, you completely miss any buyer who has set their Zillow or Redfin maximum search filter to $400,000.
Oh, because they literally won't even see it on their phone.
Exactly. But by pricing your house competitively at $399,000, your listing suddenly floods the screens of a massively expanded pool of buyers. It instantly looks like the absolute best deal in the entire zip code.
So you get a flood of foot traffic to the property.
You get multiple, highly qualified buyers who all show up to tour the house on the exact same Saturday afternoon. Buyer A is walking out of the kitchen just as buyer B is walking through the front door.
That sounds intense.
It is. Suddenly, the abstract concept of competition becomes a physical reality. Scarcity kicks in. They realize they can't just submit an offer. They have to submit an aggressive, escalating offer to beat the other family they just saw in the driveway.
You spark a bidding war.
Yes. And that engineered bidding war frequently drives the final executed contract price to $430,000, significantly above what you would have achieved if you had just quietly listed it at the market value of $415,000.
It's basically weaponizing human nature. But I guess you can't spark that kind of frenzy if the house doesn't look spectacular in the first place. Which brings us to presentation. Curb appeal, staging, and professional photography.
You have to hook them first.
Right. The reality of the modern market is that your first showing isn't the Sunday open house anymore. Your first showing is the thumbnail image on a buyer's phone.
Absolutely. If the photos are poorly lit, taken on a cell phone, with dirty dishes in the sink and personal clutter on the counters, the buyer will swipe past it in less than a second.
And professional staging isn't just about making it look pretty, is it?
No, it's really about neutralizing the space. It removes the seller's personal life, the family photos, the eccentric paint colors, so the buyer can psychologically project their own life, their own furniture, and their own family onto the property.
And navigating the fallout of that bidding war is why the data heavily insists on utilizing a professional realtor, because you really have to remove your own emotion from the counteroffers.
It's crucial. When you are selling a house you poured your own blood, sweat, and capital into, it is almost impossible to remain objective.
I can imagine.
Say a buyer submits a great offer, but asks for a $5,000 credit because they hate the custom tile you personally installed in the master bathroom.
Oh, I would be so offended.
Right. A seller takes that as a deep personal insult and might blow up a phenomenal deal just out of spite. A professional realtor acts as a necessary emotional buffer. They absorb the insult, keep the negotiations strictly focused on the math, and protect your ultimate financial interests.
So what does this all mean? We've traced the entire life cycle today. We explored acquiring a foreclosed mystery box, but insulating yourself against disaster with specialized renovation mortgages and a strict contingency budget.
A crucial first step.
We unpacked how to deploy channel managers, API integrations, and dynamic pricing algorithms to transform that static asset into a dominating automated revenue engine. And finally, we broke down how to manipulate search filters, utilize adjusted comps, and engineer a psychological bidding war to sell for absolute maximum profit.
It's quite a journey.
It is. And the recurring theme here, whether you are building a vast rental portfolio or just trying to sell your forever home, is that successful real estate fundamentally requires replacing emotional decision-making with cold data and ruthless strategy.
It is entirely about the data. And looking at this complete life cycle, I really want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay, lay it on us.
We've discussed the physical, granular steps, swinging the hammer, fixing the foundation, the classic concept of sweat equity. But as we look at the undeniable power of smart home technology, automated property management, and dynamic pricing algorithms and scrape real-time global data, we really have to ask a bigger question about the future of this industry.
Where is it all heading?
Right. Will the future of real estate investment rely less on physical sweat equity and entirely on, let's call it, data equity? Will your ability to manipulate an algorithm and optimize an API soon matter exponentially more to your bottom line than the actual physical craftsmanship of the house itself?
Wow. We'll leave you to ponder that the next time you are scrolling through a real estate app, staring at those perfectly staged photos. Remember the mystery box, respect the algorithm, and rely on the data. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.
That's it for today's Meet Sean. If this helped, follow the show and share this episode with one person who needs it. See you next time.